It was my wife's 58th birthday, and for once, I came home before dark. The smell of cake drifted through the air, and my kids stood near the dining table, a neatly wrapped box in their hands. My eldest smiled, but there was something in her eyes, a quiet challenge I didn't understand. "We all pitched in for this, Dad," she said, passing me the gift. I expected a necklace, maybe a framed family photo, something simple, loving. But when I lifted the lid, my smile froze. My hands went cold, my throat locked tight, and I heard my own voice crack. "Take it back," I whispered. "Take it back before it's too late." For 30 years, I'd traded moments for meetings, birthdays for boardrooms, bedtime stories for business trips. I told myself it was for them, that one day I'd have the time to make it all right. But the photographs inside that box told another story, one without me in it. 20 years of Christmas mornings, graduations, summer vacations, and my chair was always empty. It wasn't just a gift, it was a verdict. And the quiet way my wife watched me, hands folded, eyes unreadable, made it clear. This wasn't about a present. This was about whether I would still be in this family by the time the next birthday came. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a voice was screaming that I could fix it, that maybe, just maybe, there was still a way back. But I knew the next move I made would decide everything, whether I'd be sitting at this table next year, or looking at these faces in photographs, just like the ones in the box. I was 24 when I first met Laura. She was sitting in the back corner of a coffee shop, hair pulled into a loose braid, reading a book I had just finished the week before. We talked for hours that night, and by the time the shop closed, I knew she was the person I wanted beside me for the rest of my life. Back then, I had nothing but a used car, a second-hand suit, and a determination to build something better. Laura believed in me before I had any right to deserve it. She married me during my final year of graduate school, and we dreamed together. 2 kids, a house with a big yard, and enough stability so our children would never know the kind of uncertainty I grew up with. When our son Jacob was born, I held him in my arms and promised I'd be the kind of father who was always there. 2 years later, our daughter Emily arrived, and the promise doubled in weight. My first job at the bank was long hours but modest pay, yet it was steady. In those early years, I was home most nights for dinner, reading bedtime stories, pushing swings at the park on Saturdays. But then came the promotions. The first was small, just a title change and a bump in pay. "This will help with the mortgage," I told Laura. The second brought a company car and a bigger office. It also meant I'd have to stay late a few nights a week. "Just for this quarter," I promised. Those small sacrifices didn't seem dangerous at the time. They felt like stepping stones toward the life we wanted. But every stone was another brick in the golden cage I didn't realize I was building. It was Emily's 4th birthday when the first real crack appeared. That morning, I kissed her on the head and told her I'd be home for the party. But just after lunch, a senior partner called. An emergency meeting with a client whose account could mean millions for the firm. "It's just this once," I told myself, dialing Laura to explain. She was quiet for a moment before saying, "Do what you have to do." I told myself she understood. When I got home late that night, the kitchen was clean, the balloons were gone, and there was a single slice of cake in the fridge. Emily was already asleep. A year later, I was offered another promotion, Vice President of Commercial Accounts. The ceremony was held in the hotel ballroom downtown. Champagne, applause, the kind of moment I had imagined since I was a boy. I felt like I was finally delivering on my promise to give my family the best. Laura came with me, wearing the blue dress I loved. Halfway through the evening, I realized she was gone. I found her outside in the parking lot, arms crossed against the cold. "I had to go pick up Jacob," she said flatly. "You forgot he had baseball practice." My smile faltered. "I thought you were handling that," I said, hearing my own defensiveness. She shook her head. "We agreed you would take him tonight. He was waiting for you." Inside, they were announcing my name again for a group photo. Laura turned and got into the car without another word. I stood there for a moment, torn between the pull of my new title and the weight of what had just happened. I went back inside, telling myself I'd make it up to them. Over the months that followed, the pattern deepened. I'd miss dinner for a client meeting, miss Jacob's game for a business trip, skip Sunday breakfast because I had a flight to catch. Every time I had a reason. Every time I told myself it was temporary. Laura didn't fight me on it, at least not directly. She started taking more responsibility for the kids' schedules. Jacob stopped asking if I'd come to his games. Emily's bedtime stories were read by Laura, and when I tried to read them on rare nights home, they already knew the endings. One evening, I came home to find the three of them in the living room, playing a board game I didn't recognize. They were laughing, heads close together. A perfect picture of family. For a moment, I felt warm watching them. Then Jacob glanced at me and asked, "Do you know how to play this, Dad?" I admitted I didn't. His shrug was casual, but it cut deep. I went to bed that night with the sound of their laughter echoing in my head. Laughter that had nothing to do with me. It happened so gradually that I almost didn't notice. Laura started organizing weekends without asking about my schedule. Jacob learned to cook his own breakfast before school. Emily began riding her bike to a friend's house without needing a ride. On the rare mornings we were all in the kitchen together, I'd tell myself I was lucky to have such an independent family. They didn't need me for the little things, which meant I could focus on the big ones, securing our future, building something lasting. I didn't see it for what it was. They were learning to live without me. In the evenings, I'd return home to find the living room quiet, the kids in their rooms, Laura in the bedroom reading. Sometimes I'd knock and ask about her day. She'd smile politely and give short answers, then return to her book. I told myself it was just the comfort of routine, not distance. When I traveled for work, I'd send gifts from the airport. A baseball cap for Jacob, a charm bracelet for Emily, bottles of wine for Laura. They always thanked me, but the enthusiasm faded quickly, like I'd given them something they didn't quite know what to do with. One Friday evening, Jacob stood at the kitchen counter while I sifted through emails on my phone. "Dad," he said, "can you be home this weekend? I've got the regional game. It's important." I glanced up, ready to reassure him, and saw the way he was watching me, hopeful but bracing for disappointment. I put the phone down. "Of course," I said. I wouldn't miss it for anything. For the next few days, I carried that promise like a small victory. Maybe this would be the start of something new. But on Saturday morning, my phone rang. It was my boss, voice urgent. "Mark, the Henderson account is on the line. We need you in New York today." I stared at my weekend bag, baseball cap already packed, tickets to the game tucked inside. My mind spun with the stakes. Henderson was the largest potential client we'd ever pursued. Securing them could mean doubling our annual revenue, a leap that would secure my career for the next decade. I called Jacob from the airport. "Something came up, buddy," I began, already hating the words. Silence filled the line. Then he said, "It's fine, Dad. I get it." No anger, no sadness, just a flat acceptance that hurt worse than either. When I returned Sunday night, the house was alive with laughter. Laura's sister and her kids were visiting, the dining table crowded with dishes and half-empty glasses. I set my bag down, smiling as I stepped into the living room. Everyone was gathered for a group photo, arms around each other. "Hold on, I'll get in," I started, moving toward them. "It's okay," Laura said, her voice even. "We already took one." She turned back to the group, camera flashing. I stood there, trying not to show the sting. Later, when the guests had gone, I saw the photo framed on the hallway table. Laura and the kids were in the center, her sister's family on either side. In the middle of the couch was an empty cushion, room for one more person, if he'd been there when it mattered. I picked up the frame, staring at the gap. The angle made it obvious. I was missing, and the space looked deliberate. I told myself it was nothing, just a coincidence. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. That night, lying in bed, I thought about how easy it had become for them to leave me out without even meaning to. Or maybe they did mean to. And the worst part? I still couldn't shake the thought that landing Henderson would make it all worth it. Laura's birthday fell on a Thursday that year. For the first time in a long time, I arranged my day so I could leave the office before sunset. I even stopped at a bakery we both liked, picking up her favorite lemon cake. As I drove home, I told myself this would be the night things began to turn around. When I walked through the front door, the house was warm with the smell of roasted chicken and candles flickering on the dining table. Jacob and Emily were already there, smiling in a way that made my chest feel lighter. "You're early," Emily said, almost surprised. I kissed Laura on the cheek, handed her the cake, and saw the smallest smile tug at the corner of her mouth. "Before dinner," Jacob said, reaching for a box on the sideboard. "We want you to give Mom her gift." The wrapping paper was crisp, tied with a red ribbon. I sat down, placing the box in my lap, expecting something sentimental, a framed family photo, maybe a scrapbook of vacations. I lifted the lid. Inside was an album, thick and heavy. Across the cover, in gold letters, "Our Happy Family." I opened to the first page, a photograph from 20 years ago, Laura and Jacob at the zoo. I wasn't in it. The next page, Laura and Emily at her first ballet recital. No me. Page after page, year after year, birthdays, graduations, holidays, my face absent from every single one. My throat went dry. My hands began to tremble as I turned to the last page. It was from last Christmas. Laura, the kids, and Laura's parents, all smiling by the tree. In the corner of the couch was the same empty cushion I'd seen in that other photo. Only this time, the space looked like it had been saved for a ghost. "Take it back," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Take it back before it's too late." Laura's eyes didn't waver. Emily's smile had faded. Jacob crossed his arms, watching me with something between pity and defiance. "Too late for what, Dad?" he asked. The room went still. Laura spoke first, her voice steady but sharp. "Do you have any idea how many moments you've missed? How many times I had to explain to the kids why you weren't there? I was building a life for us," I said, the words tasting bitter even as I spoke them. "No," she said. "You were building a life for yourself. We just happened to be living in it." Jacob stepped forward. "You promised to come to my games, my tournaments. You promised, and then you didn't show. Not once or twice, dozens of times. You don't even know the positions I play now." Emily's voice cracked. "You weren't there when I broke my arm. You weren't there for my first recital, my last recital, or anything in between. You sent flowers once. The nurse thought they were from a stranger. I felt my defenses crumbling. I thought you understood why. That's the problem, Laura said. She reached for a drawer in the sideboard and pulled out an envelope. She slid it across the table toward me. I signed these 6 months ago. I just haven't decided when to hand them to you. I stared at the divorce papers, my stomach turning cold. You were going to leave me? I already left you, she said quietly. You just haven't noticed. The words hit harder than any blow. My mind raced with images, empty seats at games, Emily's cast without my signature, Laura walking out into the cold that night at the hotel. I had been telling myself I still had time, that the future held space for us to fix things. But the truth was here, on the table, in black and white. I reached for the album again, flipping through it like proof of a crime I hadn't meant to commit. Every page was a reminder that my place in this family had been slowly erased, not by force, but by my own absence. For the first time, I realized there might be no way back. The morning after Laura handed me the divorce papers, I sat in my office staring at the Henderson contract. It was everything I'd worked for. Years of networking, late nights, endless travel, distilled into a single deal that could cement my place at the top of the industry. Signing it would mean more money, more influence, more hours away from home. I saw my reflection in the glass frame of the offer letter, and for the first time, I didn't see success. I saw the empty chair in those photos. I picked up the phone and called my boss. My voice was steady, though my hands shook. I'm resigning, I said. He laughed, thinking I was joking. When I didn't laugh back, the tone shifted. You're walking away from Henderson? From all of this? Yes, I said. My family is more important. There was a long pause before he muttered something about me being a fool and hung up. I closed my laptop, slid my ID badge across the desk, and walked out of that building without looking back. That evening, I stood in the kitchen while Laura prepared dinner. I quit my job, I told her. She froze for a moment, knife hovering over the cutting board. You... what? I told them no to Henderson. No more late nights, no more missed birthdays. I'm here now. For you, for the kids, family is everything. Her eyes searched mine, wary. Mark, you've said things like this before. You disappear the moment someone waves an opportunity in front of you. This is different, I insisted. I've already walked away. No going back. She set the knife down, leaning against the counter. 6 months, she said finally. What? You show up every day for 6 months. You're present, you listen, you follow through. After that, we'll talk about what's next. Until then, nothing changes between us. It wasn't the sweeping embrace I'd imagined, but it was a door, narrow, fragile, but open. I nodded. 6 months, I said. The first weeks were strange. Mornings felt too quiet without the rush to the office. I made breakfasts, packed lunches, and walked Emily to school. I sat in the stands at Jacob's practices, clapping even when he missed a shot. At home, I tried to start conversations with Laura, but she answered politely and kept her distance. Bills began to pile up faster than I'd expected. Without my salary, we had to dip into savings. I sold the company car, canceled the golf membership, and started saying no to dinners out. My phone still buzzed with messages from former colleagues, at first curious, then pitying, then silent altogether. One afternoon, I met my oldest friend, Tom, for coffee. We'd worked side by side for years. He'd been my sounding board, my confidant. I heard you quit, he said, stirring his drink. Hell of a move. It was the right one, I said. Family comes first now. He smiled thinly. Funny thing. Henderson signed with us yesterday. Guess who's heading the account? The answer hit me before he said it. I told them you'd lost your edge, he went on, too casually. That you weren't up for the pressure anymore. They agreed. It was like a punch to the gut. I stared at him, searching for the man I thought I knew. But all I saw was someone who had been waiting for me to step aside. Walking home, the betrayal sat heavy in my chest. I had traded the life I knew for something uncertain, and now even the friendships I thought were solid were crumbling. That night at dinner, the conversation was light. Emily talking about a school project, Jacob mentioning a science test. I kept quiet, listening. When the plates were cleared, Jacob hesitated by the doorway. Dad, he said, we've got a game this Saturday. You should come if you want. It was the first time in years he'd asked without being prompted. I felt something small but warm spark inside me. I'll be there, I said. Wouldn't miss it for anything. The rest of the week, I held on to that invitation like a lifeline. On Saturday, I took my seat in the bleachers early. When Jacob ran onto the field and spotted me, he gave a quick nod before joining his teammates. It wasn't much, but it was something. A crack in the wall, a sign that maybe, just maybe, I could make it through those 6 months. The weeks that followed felt different. Not sudden bursts of change, but quiet adjustments that began to stitch something back together. One evening, Laura was cooking in the kitchen when I offered to help. She handed me a cutting board and a pile of vegetables, her eyebrows raised like she wasn't sure I knew what to do. I clumsily chopped carrots, earning a laugh from her that sounded almost like the old days. It was a small thing, but it stayed with me. Emily started dropping bits of her world into conversation. How her best friend was moving away. How she didn't like her English teacher. How she was nervous about an upcoming recital. These were details she used to share only with Laura. I listened, resisting the urge to jump in with solutions, and she seemed to appreciate that. I was at Jacob's Saturday game, clapping until my hands hurt, when he came over during a break. Hey, Dad, I might be transferring to a school across the state, he said. My stomach tightened. Why? He shrugged, eyes on the field. They've got a better program, and I'm used to you not being around, so it won't really change much. The words landed like a punch. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Finally, I said, Give me 6 months, Jacob. Let me prove I can be the kind of dad you want to stick around for. He studied me for a long moment before giving a small nod. 6 months. That night, I stayed up late, replaying the conversation. I realized the challenge wasn't just to show up. It was to make my presence matter. As winter gave way to spring, the gaps between us began to close. I made a habit of cooking Sunday breakfasts, something Laura and the kids came to expect. We started having no-phone dinners 3 times a week, where we actually talked instead of staring at screens. Emily taught me how to make her favorite cookies. Jacob showed me highlights from his games. Laura was still cautious, but there were signs. One Saturday morning, she asked if I wanted to join her for the farmer's market. We walked side by side, not quite touching, but the silence between us felt less like a wall and more like a bridge being rebuilt. We began creating new traditions. Friday night movies, Saturday morning walks, board games on rainy Sundays. It wasn't the same as before. It was something different, something more deliberate. Every shared laugh, every meal, every game felt like laying another brick in a foundation we'd almost lost. One evening, as we cleared the dinner table, Laura said, "Can you give me a hand in the office?" I followed her, thinking she wanted help with the computer. Instead, she opened a drawer and pulled out an envelope, the same one she'd slid across the table months ago. My chest tightened. She held it up for a moment, then tore it in half, the paper ripping loud in the quiet room. "You've won back our trust, Mark," she said simply. I felt the weight of the last year, the sacrifices, the doubt, the nights lying awake wondering if any of it would be enough, lift from my shoulders. I stepped forward, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't pull away when I hugged her. That night, we sat with the kids in the living room, playing a board game I hadn't seen before. Emily leaned against my shoulder. Jacob grinned when he beat me in the final round. It wasn't just a win in the game. It was a win in something far more important. The tension that had defined our home for years was gone, replaced by something steadier, warmer, and for the first time in decades, I wasn't thinking about what I'd given up to be there. I was thinking about what I'd gained. It had been a full year since the night Laura tore the divorce papers in half. Life looked different now, simpler in some ways, richer in others. I woke each morning without the weight of meetings and deadlines, instead thinking about the meals we'd share, the games we'd play, the conversations waiting to happen. One Saturday morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table with Jacob, helping him plan his college applications, when Emily shuffled in, hair messy from sleep. She poured herself a bowl of cereal and joined us. I looked at them, tall and confident in ways that still surprised me, and thought, this is success. I'd been invited to speak at a local business conference about leadership. In the past, I would have talked about growth metrics, client acquisition, efficiency models. This time, I walked on stage with nothing but a single sentence in my head. Success without your family is failure. The audience was full of professionals, people where I'd been not too long ago, chasing the next rung up the ladder, justifying the missed dinners and broken promises. I told them my story, unvarnished. The late nights, the empty chairs, the photo album that nearly ended my marriage. I told them about the 6-month trial my wife had set, and how close I'd come to losing everything that actually mattered. When I finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. Then someone in the front row raised his hand. "How do you know when it's too late?" I didn't sugarcoat it. If you're asking that question, you're already late. The only thing you can do is start now. Afterward, a young man approached me in the lobby. He said he was considering taking a job that would require constant travel. "I want to provide for my family," he said, "but I don't want to lose them in the process." I put a hand on his shoulder. Providing isn't just about money. It's about being there. Really there. Don't trade moments for things you can't take with you. Walking back to my car, I realized that sharing my mistakes wasn't just cathartic. It might actually help someone avoid the pain I'd caused myself and my family. That was a kind of redemption I hadn't expected. At home, Laura had rearranged the living room. On the wall above the couch hung a new family portrait. All 4 of us were there. Laura in the center, Emily leaning on her shoulder, Jacob on my other side with an arm around me. I was in the middle of them, smiling in a way that wasn't just for the camera. Beneath the frame was a small wooden shelf. On it sat the old photo from years ago, the one with the empty cushion where I should have been. It startled me at first, seeing them side by side, the life I'd had and the life I had now. Laura caught me looking. "I put it there on purpose," she said. "Not to make you feel bad, to remind us all where we've been. and what we never want to go back to. I nodded slowly. Fair enough. That evening, we had a small gathering, just us and a few close friends. Jacob grilled burgers in the backyard. Emily brought out pitchers of lemonade, and Laura and I moved between the kitchen and the patio, making sure everyone had enough to eat. I noticed how natural it felt, the easy laughter, the absence of tension. As the sun set, Emily handed me a Polaroid camera. Take a picture of all of us, Dad. We crowded together in the same spot as the new portrait. The picture developed slowly, colors coming into focus. This time, no empty spaces, no missing faces. Later, after the guests left, I sat in the living room with Laura. The kids were upstairs, music drifting faintly through the ceiling. You know, I said, for a long time I thought I was building a legacy with my work. But I see now, the only legacy worth leaving is this. Laura leaned her head on my shoulder. It's always been this, Mark. You just had to see it. We stayed there for a long while, saying nothing. The room felt full in a way I couldn't have imagined a year ago. Before heading to bed, I looked one last time at the wall, the new portrait glowing under the lamplight, the old empty chair photo resting quietly beneath it. The two images told the whole story without a single word. The past would always be there, a reminder carved into memory and framed in wood. But so would the present, and now I understood which one I wanted to keep living in.